Thanks for reading Fons and Porter's Love of Quilting. We're happy to bring you the Sew Easy lesson from the July-August issue of Love of Quilting to life in this video. The lesson shows 3 different ways to make bias, and I'll cover each of them in this video. The first one is using bias bars. Bias bars come either in plastic or in metal, and the negative of the metal is that it can get hot when you're working with it. I'm working with some plastic bars this time. These bars are the trick in making the binding. It makes it come out just the right width. It's so much easier than doing it without them. Now, for this video, I'm going to make finished size bias of 3/8 of an inch. So I will start out cutting my strips 1 3/8 inches wide, and those need to be cut on the bias because you're going to be using this in curves on your quilt. If you want to make a different size of bias, just look on the packaging and it will tell you what size to cut your strips to get the finished size of bias that you want. Fold the strips in half lengthwise with the wrong sides facing and machine stitch 1/4 inch from the raw edges. Now trim the seam allowance to 1/8 of an inch. For the 3/8 inch wide bias, finished bias that I'm going to be making, I'm using the 3/8 inch strip, of course, the bias bar, and I'm inserting it into the strip. Adjust the strip so that the seam is centered on one side of the bar. Press the seam to one side, and that becomes the wrong side, the back side of the strip. Turn over and press the right side to get a nice crisp press. Slide the bar through the strip until the entire strip is pressed, and now you have some wonderful bias that you can use for all sorts of things on your quilt top. Now onto our second method of making bias. This is using the bias tape maker. This tape maker even has a variety that you can make fusible bias, which would sure come in handy in a lot of situations. The instructions in the packaging tell you exactly how wide to cut your bias strips according to how wide the finished bias needs to be. In this case, I'm using a 3/4 inch bias tape maker. So I've cut my strips, and now all I do is insert the end of the strip into the bias tape maker. If necessary, you can cut the end at a point and use an awl or your stiletto to start the end of the tape through there. And then that way you'll get a grab on it out the other end. Now pin the end of the folded strip to the ironing board cover. Pull the tape maker while ironing the folded tape until the entire strip is pressed. It's that easy. Now you have bias all ready to sew onto your quilt top. That's method 2. Now on to method 3. This one is Liz's grandmother's method, and it involves using pins, very low tech, on the ironing board. In this situation, we're going to make 3/8 inch finished bias. So we're going to cut our strips 1 1/8 inch wide from the fabric that you want to use. And you fold one end of the strip in thirds with wrong sides facing up. Do it for about 2 inches and press that. Then lay the folded end of the strip in the center of the ironing board. Insert a long pin through the ironing board cover. Bring the pin across the folded strip and reinsert it into the ironing board cover on the opposite side, like I'm showing here. Place a second pin about 2 inches from the first pin, just like you did the first. Check to be sure that the amount of exposed pin across each strip is exactly equal to the width of the folded strip. Pins should not be inserted into the strip, only into the ironing board cover. As you gently pull the folded end of the strip under the pins, the remaining bias strip will fold on itself. It's magic, isn't it clever? And then continue pulling the strip gently through the pins until the entire strip is folded and pressed. Thank you to Liz's grandma for coming up with such a great low-tech way of making bias. Thank you for watching the video, and happy quilting!